For today's session, generally I pick topics which are beginner friendly, but in this one I have taken a bit complicated topic, gaining initial access in Azure using Cognito. So how many of you have, know about Cognito? Anyone? What about incognito? Everyone? Okay. But this session is going to be about Cognito. So we will see what Cognito is and how we can abuse Cognito to gain initial access in Azure. In AWS. I am going to be starting with the very basics, but again, this is just a session of maybe 30 to 45 minutes. So I'm not going to be deep diving into each and every detail. So, but I will try my best to make you aware about what AWS is, what are its features, what are its services, and how we can abuse some of the services like Cognito to gain initial access in AWS. So how many of you have some idea with the web application pen testing or maybe web application hacking? You can call it as. Okay, can I see your hands? Okay, 1, 2. Okay, looks like most of today audience is from college. Maybe that might be the reason. So I think it will be much easier to understand since some web application component is also involved in it. So let's start with the very basics of AWS. So what exactly is AWS? So AWS stands for Amazon Web Services, offering by Amazon, and the AWS is a leading cloud provider. In simple terms, basically, as a company or a developer or anyone who wants to rent out infrastructure instead of purchasing the entire infrastructure, you can rent out, and you can ask AWS to rent out the infrastructure, and AWS will manage those infrastructure so that you don't have to worry about the purchasing that actual infrastructure, and you only pay for what you use. That's the model of AWS. AWS is a leading cloud provider. It offers key services like S3, EC2, VPC, Lambda. S3 is for storing our files on the cloud. It's very cheap to store our files on cloud in the S3 buckets. Then they provide EC2, which is Elastic Compute Service, Elastic Cloud Compute, I think, where you can run virtual machines, etc., etc. Then VPC stands for Virtual Private Cloud, where you can create private cloud in the AWS infrastructure. So you don't have to create network on your on-prem systems, but in the cloud. And with Lambda, you can host serverless applications. Again, it is a framework for building secure application. Again, the security building the security part of the application that you have to take care of, and the secure infrastructure, making the infrastructure secure, will be taken care by AWS. Again, as I mentioned, it operates across multiple regions and availability zones. Again, these regions are located in worldwide, and this availability zones is nothing but a data center in your region. Okay, let's look at cloud cyber kill chain. But what exactly is a cyber kill chain? So cyber kill chain is a set of methodology used by penetration testers, red teamers, to successfully execute a red team engagement or pen test. It all starts with the external reconnaissance, where we are outside the network, and from there we try to get initial access into their internal network. So I think one cool technique that Tara showed is the via phishing. By phishing, we can get access to their network, the credential, and through the credential we can get access to their network. There are many other techniques. Again, we cannot cover all the techniques in a single session, but yeah, there are many more techniques that you can use to gain initial access in these cloud infrastructures. There are many techniques that we don't even know attackers are already using it. And once you get access to the internal infrastructure, then your internal reconnaissance starts. Again, you do the same thing. You try to find what are the users, what are high privilege users, where are the critical infrastructure is. These things, normal enumeration. And then you try to escalate your privilege. So when you gain initial access, you might be a low privilege user, and then from that low privilege, you try to find some privilege escalation techniques. And then once you find out any technique, then you do that and escalate your privileges, and then you become another user, right? And again, the cycle repeats. From that other user, you try to again do the privilege escalation part and gain access to another user who might who might has more access than the previous user, and this cycle repeats until you gain access to the high privilege users like domain admins or the root user in the cloud, you can say that. And once you become a root user in cloud or admin user, you look for persistent techniques because you want to hold your foothold in the network so that you don't get kicked out. So you will have different persistent techniques that you will apply there. And once you have set up your persistence, then you do your objective. It can be data exfiltration, it can be crypto mining, it can be maybe stealing credit card information, whatever. It depends on the attackers and the company goals, what they want in their network as a final goal. Okay, so that's the cloud cyber kill chain. Again, it's simple, but the techniques are more complex than that. Okay, let me go through scenario. This is a real attacker's life cycle. The attacker group is called 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏. Why it is called 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏? Because first of all, they are evil, that's why will, and 𝗤UI because they use GUI tools in their operations, that's why the name is 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏. Okay, so let's see this the cyber kill chain that they follow in their attack path. Again, very interesting. So how do they generally do the initial? Again, they don't worry, they don't think about which about the client. They generally just go all out and attack any client they want, because they are attackers, not pen testers. They don't need any authorization. So yeah, so for initial access, what they do, they look for vulnerable GitLab servers that are publicly out there. And before let me tell you what GitLab is. So basically GitLab is a web-based DevOps platform that allows the developers and companies to manage their development code. I think yeah, similar to GitHub. Okay, so again, developers are storing their code on these GitLab repos or GitHub repos, and in those code there might be credentials that they are saving there. Again, in the environment files, generally we save credentials, the clear text credentials, and there are many places, the other places that where we also save the credential because the application needs it. Okay, so there was a vulnerability in this vulnerable GitLab server. It is called CVE, named as CVE 2021-22205, not an old CVE. I think 2021 is not that old. So what was happened? So in this CVE, attackers can gain remote code execution on these machines which are vulnerable, and there is no authentication required. So anyone in the world, if they see the GitLab server version, I think I have not mentioned the version here, but if they see a server running a particular version, they know that it is vulnerable to a remote code execution vulnerability. Okay, so that's what they do. So they might have some campaigns where they will look for these particular servers that are running the vulnerable servers, and then it's very easy for them just to have a publicly known exploit and then use that exploit to gain the code execution on that particular GitLab server. Okay, once they have their foothold on the server, again, as I mentioned, it's a GitLab server, which is with the intended use of the server is to store the code. And again, in the code, we usually hard code the credentials because our application need it for performing some operation. Okay, yeah, so that's what they also do. Same thing. They look for publicly exposed credential on these GitLab servers, and there are many times that AWS credentials are also saved there. If the organization is using AWS as their infrastructure service, there are high chances that they are saving their credential in those codes so that the code can talk to the AWS services, right? So yeah, that's where they find all these credentials, and once they have these credentials, the AWS credentials, then the reconnaissance part starts. They use S3 browser for S3 enumeration plus IAM enumeration. Again, as Tarak mentioned, IAM is the identity and access management service, which stores all the information about users, groups, roles, etc., etc. So yeah, they use again, as I told you, they prefer to use GUI based tools. So they don't use CLI, they use AWS web console to enumerate. And then once they find something interested, maybe one of the scenarios shown here is that they found some credential in the Terraform state file. I'm not going to be talking about what Terraform state file is, but think of it like as a file. Or maybe they find some other file where some credentials are saved of a high privileged user. That's how they are escalating their privileges. Or there might be some high privileged role that is present and they were able to access that role. So this is how they escalate their privileges. And then yeah, they also try to manipulate the policies to gain elevated privileges. And once they have escalated their privileges, they will go for the persistence part. How they can persist? Basically, you can create not multiple, you can actually create two access keys for a user. So if a high privileged user has one key, attacker can create another one, and no one knows about that another access key is already there, and they can use that other key to have persistence in the network or in the AWS account. They can also change the password of the users. Generally, attackers don't do that. They don't change the password because they might get caught in the act. Okay. Or maybe some other technique for persistence is to create a EC2 instance and have their foothold from the SSH service. Okay. And once they get a foothold, and they know that they cannot be kicked out because they have some way or other to log back into the AWS account. They complete their mission. What they do, they basically spin up hundreds of virtual machines in the cloud, and what they do crypto mining using those servers. Okay. And I think for a day, if you like spin up around 100 of servers, it is going to cost you in maybe thousands of dollars. Okay. So it's yeah, that is how they are impacting those clients. And they are also benefiting because they are also using those servers for crypto mining and yeah, making a buck for themselves. Okay. And this attack is very popular in and is being used by this particular attack. Yeah. So I think if you see the cyber kill chain, it totally maps with this is generally the security researchers or pen testers or red teamers follow, and attackers also follow the same thing. Okay. That's when the client when a client come to us, they are basically trying to simulate an attacker, and that's where they hire us, and then we do the same activity what a attacker will do in their network. Okay. Yeah, so that's the cyber kill chain and the attacker life cycle. Now let's look at the different ways to get entries in a AWS account. And these AWS accounts are very privileged. Why? Because again, as you saw in scenario where an attacker can run thousands of servers and then they can do crypto mining. Also on these AWS accounts, we have different storage services, and many companies are storing client information or citizen information on those particular buckets. And if an attacker let's get hold of that AWS account, and from that AWS account they can exfiltrate those information from the S3 buckets, again that is going to be impacting the client, plus it is also going to damage their reputation as well. Yeah, so that's so let's look at some of the initial access techniques. The first one is the public facing application vulnerability. So let's suppose you build an application, and if your application is vulnerable to SSRF or RC we saw in case of GitLab, but if it is vulnerable to a server-side request forgery also, then you can exfiltrate a credential from a EC2 server. That's one of the technique. Second technique is what we are going to be seeing in this particular session, which is cognito identity pools, and especially the unauthenticated guest access. That is what we are going to see. Then how attackers gain access to initial access in the AWS account. Maybe they might get some leaked AWS keys in the wild, maybe committed to a public GitHub repo, or left on share. This one we find a lot in our internal pen test or internal red team assessments. Because if we go through the files present in those shares, generally there are chances that we are able to get the AWS access keys, and this has happened a lot. We were able to directly gain access to the root account access keys. Yeah, so I think yeah, this one I have seen that in any of the pen test courses that I have seen, that they really teach about these techniques, like the Git access keys exposed to GitHub again, but the chances are very less. I think the GitLab or GitHub also has some inbuilt detection. Now they can also notify the user if they mistakenly expose their AWS keys. This is, I think, you don't see right as of now more of this as of now, but yeah, but you can see it as well. There are misconfigured role trust policies. Again, another technique, compromise CI/CD pipelines. S3 misconfiguration. Maybe if there is a publicly available S3 bucket and you might get something from that bucket. I think this one I have covered in the previous session. Phishing or weak credential use. I think Tarak already has mentioned in the this Azure session. Then publicly registry images. But yeah, but I think the we are going to be focusing on cognito identity pools. Yeah, these are some of the initial access and entry vectors in the AWS account. Okay, sorry. Now let's look at the AWS infrastructure. Let me just summarize this. So in an AWS account, we have identities, which are your users, groups, roles, and using these roles, roles or users or groups, you try to access the resources like S3 bucket, servers, Cognito, Lambda, etc., etc. Okay, and how they will get access to this? So generally there is a policy. In the policies there are access information like who can do what. Okay, if let's suppose our access policy is like a user can access S3 bucket, and if that policy is attached to this particular user, it means this particular can access S3 bucket via a attached policy. So that's how users can access resources. Again, this is the machine world. So what happens in the human world? Generally a user will get credential to one of these identities, and using those identities they can authenticate to the AWS account and basically get access to this particular identity, and whatever policies that are attached with this identity, these policies, using those policies they can access the resources that they are authorized to do. Then we have roles as well. We will see what roles are. But yeah, that's the basic AWS account. Basically we have resources and identities. Any questions till now on this part? Basic, we are just covering the very basics of AWS. Yeah, please. No. So group is generally used for managing the user. So if you want to set a policy on a group of users, so you create a group, add users in that group, and then you create a policy, attach that policy to that group. Using that since the policy is attached to the group, all the users in that group will inherit the same policy. So if you want to give permission to n number of users, instead of giving each of them one by one, you just create a group, add all the users in that group, and a single policy on a group will inherited by all the users. Okay, these are I will show you what the policy looks like. Besides these are like access control documents, who can do what. Okay, we will see. Let me just show you. Before that, let me just go over this slide as well again. One of the most, actually my throat is sore, so that's why. The main thing here is the IAM policy here. So IAM service. Okay, so this IAM service is the identity and access management service. This service basically manages who can do what. Okay, it also stores the users. So this is a user who basically send the credentials to the IAM service. Then the IAM authenticates that user, assign it to identity, and whatever the policies are assigned to that identity, using that they can access the AWS resources. Okay, let me show you how an AWS account looks like. Who knows my password here? I think I just showed you guys, if you were observing there. Let me show you an AWS account. Let me go to the come again. Okay, anyway. Yeah, let me go to the dashboard, I guess. So that's the dashboard of a AWS account. Again, if you see, I am logged in as actually I am logged in as a role. As you can see, this is the role, but you can log in as a user. These are the services that this role has permissions to. Not the these are all the services, and this role might have access to some of these services. Okay, let me go to the IAM service. Again, IAM is like a service which stores users and roles in AWS account. So that's the IAM service. As you can see, these are the users. As you can see, right now there are 1 2 3 4 5 users in this particular account. This is the name of the this is the account ID of a AWS account. Also, you don't want to publicly expose this account. I can do it because it's just a test account, but don't expose the production accounts to anyone. Okay, so these are the users. Again, I am on the IAM service. These are the users, these are the roles, and these are the policies. Okay, let it load. I think there are I think more than 1,000 policies that are given by AWS, and you can use one of those policy if that suits you. Right now it's not loading. We'll see. Anyway, let me go to users first, and let me go to let's go to the admin user. And if you see, to this admin user there is a policy attached which is called administrator access policy. And if you see this particular policy, if you see the effect here is allow, and action is star, it means everything, and the resource is also star, it means that this particular user can execute any action on any resource. That's why it's the admin user, because of this particular policy that is attached to the admin user. That's the concept of policies, and you can fine grain these policies however you like for particular users and roles. And these are the roles. As you can see, let me go to a role. Let's open this role particular. Maybe let's open this one role. This role. As you can see, this role also has this is the role, and this role also has a policy attached to it called lambda full forecast. And if you see, some access related control is set up here as well. Maybe so basically this particular role has get function action over this particular resource. This is a lambda function. We will see what these are. Anyways, yeah, so that's users roles. And policies are also loaded. As you can see, as of now there are more than 1,000 policies that are available that are made available by AWS. But again, you can also create your own policies as your business needs. Okay, so that's the basic overview of an AWS account, particularly the IAM service. If you want to spin up servers, you can go to EC2 service, and you can easily create instances. Instances are nothing but virtual machines. Okay, so if you see, I think there are 2 instances which are already in the stopped state. Again, if you are not using your instance, please stop it, because you are paying for what you use. If it is in running state, you are going to pay to the AWS whatever the cost of that particular running instance. Okay, if you want to store your files, you can use this particular service which is called S3 service, and you can save your files, backups, images, anything in this particular service. So these are the folders, and in those folder maybe you see some data. Okay, yeah, you can save it here as well. Again, these are just dummy data. Let's see. Okay, so that's a brief about AWS account. Okay, it's very simple. There is a user who wants to access some AWS resources, so they will authenticate via IAM service, and the permissions, the policies that are assigned to that particular user, using those policies they can access the resources. So okay, simply that's how any user can access services. Now let's go to roles. What roles are, and this is a bit complicated, but I will try my best. Okay, so you saw that a user can access resources because a user has some credential, right? But what about a particular service? Let's suppose a EC2 service. This service, how will this service use credentials? Okay, one way is we can hard code the credentials, again, which is a very bad policy. And again, if we hard code the credential, the validity of AWS credential is of lifetime. So if we hard code a credential, and maybe we just we just lost this instance, or maybe we can forget about this instance, so we don't know if this might be hacked by anyone, and they can use those credentials to gain access. Okay, that's why Amazon created a concept of roles. Okay, so this is what a role is. Okay, so let's suppose if this instance okay, wants to access this S3 bucket. So let's suppose a website is running on this particular instance. Okay, so if there is a website and there is a requirement that user can upload the images on the website, and the images will be saved on a S3 service. Okay, so now you are uploading your images on this S3 and on the website which is running on EC2 instance. Now EC2 instance, what it will do, because it wants to store your images in the bucket, right? What it will do, it will assume a role. Okay, so there is a role defined or predefined role which has policies which defined what whoever assumes this role, what they can do. It is defined in the policy. Then there is another policy called trust policy. It defines who can assume this role. Okay, because we don't want anyone to assume this role, right? So we define it in the trust policy. So if there is in the trust policy it is defined that this particular instance can assume this role, then this particular instance can assume this role. So what will happen? This particular instance, if it will try to assume this role, and in the trust policy it allows it to assume the role, then what will happen? The STS service or IAM service, it is actually STS service which will create temporary credentials, temporary AWS credentials, and gives it back to the EC2 instance. Okay, and this EC2 instance, once it has the temporary credential, and this temporary credential has this policy attached which allows anyone to access this bucket. Okay, so now it has the temporary credential. It will use those temporary credential, the EC2 service, to upload the images in a S3 bucket. So that's the concept of roles. Again, no hard-coded credentials anywhere. Everything is happening in the runtime. Also, the credentials are not long-term credentials; they are temporary credentials. So the validity is around, I think, 15 minutes. Yeah. Any question on the concept of roles? I will be very happy to explain if someone did not understand it. Even if you are not able to understand, if you feel shy to ask the question, maybe you try to learn more about roles. Okay, if you are interested in that. Okay, but yeah, again, there is a role on which some policies are defined. A service can assume a role and get the temporary credentials. Using those temporary credentials, it can access other service. Okay, that's the concept of roles. Now let's talk about again, all this information that I have just shared is basically for the Cognito service. Again, what exactly is Cognito? Okay, so Cognito is an identity service which manages authentication, authorization for web application and mobile application. So let's suppose you are a developer and you are building a web app. Okay, so for every web app, for most of the web apps, you will have authentication page, and you have to write the code for that authentication. You might be using some third-party libraries, or you might be having your own implementation of authentication and authorization. And whoever has done a bit of coding and created authentication and authorization, they know that it's it's difficult. Okay, because we don't know when there is some vulnerability that we might have added in the application. We don't know. Okay, so that's why AWS has come up with a service called Cognito. So it says to the developers, hey, you don't focus on building the authentication and authorization. You just focus on building your application features and functionalities. Okay, so now the developers has to focus on their features and functionalities rather than working days and night on this developing the authentication and authorization. Okay, so that's what Cognito provides. It provides authentication and authorization. It is also a directory service. Actually, it is divided. This Cognito is divided into two services called user pools and identity pools. User pools is like directory services which stores information. Again, when I say directory service, suppose think of it like as a database. It is a database that stores user information. Okay, so whenever you sign up, your a specific user will be created in a identity pool. We will see. Again, it supports OAuth2, SAML, other social logins as well. So yeah. So this is what user pools is and identity pools. So let's suppose there is a need for a user to access a resource. Okay, so again, for everything to access in AWS, you need to have some credentials. So that's where identity pool comes in, and it will create temporary credential and assign to the users, and then users can use that credential to save their files or maybe to access that particular service that they need. I think again I have explained user pools already. Let me show you how user pools looks like. Let me go to the Cognito service. Okay, so that's the Cognito notes. This is the one. There are 3 user pools, but yeah, so this is the one that I am using. Again, as you can see, we have app clients. This is our data related about our web application is stored in the app client. Then we have users. Again, as of now, there is a single user. Again, this is a test account. If more users signs up on this particular Cognito pool, then there are more users will be there. Then you can also organize users in using groups. You can set up sign in, sign up. Okay, so let me show you let me show you a web application that actually uses the Cognito for authentication. So let me go to this portal. So this portal is from an AWS course yeah. So let me take, I think this is this exercise that we are going to be solving, and this is the website link. Okay, so that's a simple web application, as you can see, and most of the application has a sign in method as well. Okay, so again, if I click on this sign in, if you see, it will redirect me to a Cognito web page, as you can see. So again, let me show you once again. Developer has built this application and they have delegated the authentication and authorization to other service called Cognito. When I click on the sign in, again, if you see right now, I have to sign in to see my notes, I have to sign in to see my files, I have to sign in to view my profile. Okay, now I can just click on sign in and it has given me a page to sign in. I can also create users. Since I already have one user in the directory, I think it was it was this one. Yeah, so yeah, these are just the normal day-to-day users. So I will just type the email and then the password that I used to sign up, and then I sign in. As you can see, now I can see my notes, I can see my files if there are any, or I can upload my files here. I can see my some account information, things like that, and I can also sign out. Okay, that's a simple application, and the main purpose of this application is saving the notes, saving the files, but the developer don't has to worry about the authentication part, right? They can easily use Cognito service and they can attach that Cognito service to this application, and then the application delegates the authentication to Cognito service. I think it has saved a lot of times. I think many of the apps that we have built is using Cognito as a service. If I just go to this portal, maybe let me open a private window. If I go to this particular labs, yeah, so this labs is from an amazing course. So, and there are many labs on this. So yeah, even I learned my AWS pen testing from this particular course. So if you are interested, you can also learn more about this course. Let me just type my password again. If you see, for signing some other portal, and if I continue, then redirect authenticates me and redirects me to a web application. Okay, again, it has saved a lot of efforts from developers. Let me just close this one. Let's focus on this particular application. Yeah, okay. So I hope you now have an idea of what the Cognito is. Any doubts? No, right? Yeah, please. If you have, okay. Generally, IAM is for authenticating to AWS account, but this user pools is authenticating to the web applications that developers build. So they are two separate use cases.
So is this similar to Google Firebase authentication?
I'm not aware about Google Firebase actually. What they use is, but this is like a different directory. So maybe, okay, so let's suppose if you have thousands of applications, so what you can do for each of the application, you create a user pool, and through that you can manage users of that particular application.
So maybe
Mm-hmm.
users data.
Yes. 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 Plus, it also provides using that database they can authenticate against. Okay, and then it will create some tokens in which some of the details of the user is already there, and then the application can use those tokens to do whatever they need to do in their application. Okay, and why there is a separate service, not IAM service? Because if because generally generally IAM service is used for allowing users access to the services of AWS, not the web applications. Okay, this is particularly focusing on the application part. Again, it simplifies the authentication part and takes a lot of burden from the developers. Okay, even we are building applications at a very fast rate using the Cognito service, because we don't have to worry about any vulnerabilities or issues happening in the authentication, because it is built by AWS, and it is a robust mechanisms, and we don't see any vulnerabilities by publicly known vulnerabilities on this particular service. Okay. Yeah, again, if you see this particular portal, now where is this? Okay, I just showed you a portal right here. Okay, let me just open it here. I think it just took 2 days to build this portal, because we don't have to worry about the authentication part of it. Okay. Anyways, yeah, so that's about the Cognito user pools. Again, as that's the workflow. So you have let's suppose you have built an application and you want to delegate your authentication to Cognito pools. So how a user connects to an app? So user, they will first connect to the app. Let me just show you here side by side. Where is this? Let's open this one. Okay, so that's the website that user wants to connect. So I have already connected to the web application. Okay, because I have opened the portal, and then I will send a sign in request to the Cognito user pool. Okay. Now if I click here, this is what it's doing. It's sending a sign in request to the Cognito user pool. Then again, it is it can also redirect to a third party IDP, but that's optional. Then it will send some additional challenges. Basically, when we enter our credentials, it will do some I think it will create some challenges. That's what happened in the that is taken care of by AWS. We don't have to know the details of what AWS is using behind the scenes to create these challenges. So okay, so yeah, once we signs in, AWS will create some challenges. Again, these are just nonces. If you know about what a nonce is, or some basically a random string that it uses for authentication, we don't have to worry about. We just have to sign in. Once we sign in, when I click sign in, it will create some challenges. It will happen behind the scenes. User will don't see anything, and then it will create some tokens and send the tokens to the application, and also sign us in the application. So when I click sign in, it is creating some challenges and redirecting back to the application, and we are now signed in. That's what that is what happening in the behind the scenes. And now the application has the user token. So application can identify a user, and then application can see what this user basically can do. It can create its own authorization on top of that particular token, and then it can using that token, user can using the token of the user, application can fetch the user data or anything related to that particular user. Okay, that's what the Cognito user pool is, and it is how it is used by the applications. Any questions on the user pool part? Okay, perfect. I know it's a complex topic, but yeah, I'm trying my best here. Yeah. Now let's come to the identity pools. Again, it exchanges these external identities for temporary AWS credentials. So let's suppose there is a need that let's go to this diagram. So let's suppose if this application wants to access some let's suppose this application wants to save the images in a S3 bucket. Okay, and S3 bucket will not allow it unless this application has some credential. Right now it has the tokens, but not the AWS credentials that the service needs. That's where identity pools comes in. They take the where am I? Okay, so what happens in case of identities? They take those user tokens once the user signs in. Using that, it will take the token, and then it will send back a temporary credential that the user can use to access that particular service. Let's see the flow, then you will understand. Again, user will go to the application, they will authenticate. Again, click on the signs in. The Cognito user pool will send back a user token to the application. If we see here, if we go to F12, I think inspect, I think it might have sent me some tokens. Maybe if you can see in the local storage, maybe if you see, this is the token I'm talking about. Let me just copy this token. Okay, I think I have messed this token up because this keyboard has control somewhere else. Okay, control A, control C, control shift T, mouse pad, control V, control V. As you can see, these are the tokens sent by the AWS user pool. As you can see, there is a ID token. So AWS actually uses this to exchange for the temporary code tokens. Then we have refresh token, using which we can create new tokens, and then we have the access token somewhere. Yeah, this is the access token. So this is the identity token. This is the access token that is generally used by the web application for authorization and authentication. And in case if an application wants to use AWS services, it can take this identity token, talk to the identity pool service, and gets back a temporary credentials, and then it will interact with that service, and you will not see because it is happening behind the scenes. So if I show you, so for login I have used identity pool, and there is a service, so I am here interacting with DynamoDB services. It's a database service by AWS, so I cannot just use that particular service, right? So behind the scenes, this has already exchanged the credentials, AWS credentials for me, and if I write something here, using the credential, it will save this particular data in a DynamoDB. We can also upload files. So maybe let's upload this file. I don't know what exactly in this file, so let me upload this particular file. And if I click on upload, okay, again it is being uploaded in a S3 bucket. And again, how this application has the credential to upload things in the S3 bucket? Because it is using the identity token of the user, and it is exchanging it with the temporary credentials, and once it has a temporary credential, using that credentials, it is saving the things in the S3 bucket. Let me show you, maybe if I know which bucket it is saving. Actually I built this application way back. Let's go to the S3 service. What do you think? Where? Maybe, okay, maybe here. Okay, notes uploads. Okay, this is for notes. This is for second one. Let's see. I don't think here. This one maybe. Okay, not this one. Maybe this one. Private. This one, and this account maybe. No, not here. I think this one, maybe Fox Corp. Okay, not this one. Maybe this one. Okay, I don't think this one as well. Even I don't know where it is saving. I think it should be saving in the uploads, maybe. Private, maybe place or not placeholder here. Anyway, I can look it up, right? Let me go to Cognito. Let's go to identity pool, and let's see the permissions that this particular Cognito identity pools have. I think it is using this authenticated role to save it. I'm assuming that. Again, I build this app way back. Let's see the policy, which bucket it is allowing me to save the data in. It is actually saving the data in this bucket called Cognito uploads private, and then the username. Okay, so let's go to this particular bucket, Cognito notes upload S3. This one, right? Uploads private, and then the user, this is the user directory, and I think this is the name. Oh, okay. I think it is changing the file name with this particular name, and then it is saving the file. If you see the date, it is like 10th of January, which is today. It's already 5 o'clock. No, right? Yeah, I think it is using the different time zone. That's why using the different time zone. Okay. So what's the time right now? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So that's how it is saving the file. Where am I? Oh, yeah. I hope you get an idea of this particular slide as well. Okay. Everything is happening in the behind the scenes. There are no hard-coded credentials anywhere. There are no long-term credentials. Even if the attacker gets hold of a temporary credential, the validity is 15 minutes. So by the time they get the credential might be expired. Now comes the initial access part. How do we exploit this cognito service to get initial access? Okay. Actually, it's very simple, and using just 2 commands you can get access to service. Okay, so generally what happens, generally this is not what we have seen in the AWS pen test, but this scenario we have found in the when we are doing the web application pen test. So generally there are some data that web application uses to integrate with cognito, and this data most of the time is publicly accessible. So if I go to this particular let's do a pen test of this particular website. Let me sign out because I don't want any authentication to come in place. So what's the first thing you will do on this particular website? What's the first thing? Anyone? Maybe from the bug bounty? Anyone? What's the first thing we will do? Perfect. Let's go to source code. And now what we will try to do? Okay, network tab. Okay. And okay, whoa, so many things. How to go to a network? Like inspect and then go to network tab. This tab you're referring? Now what? What? Source code ko hata दूं. Okay. Let's go. Okay, from here. Same thing. Login. Okay, sign in. But I don't have the credentials to sign in, right? You want to reload it? Oh, okay, sorry. So I will reload it. Let me zoom in. How do we zoom in here? Control plus. I don't know how to zoom in here. Let me do control. The reason why I'm facing difficulty because there is some issue with the control on this particular keyboard. Setting. Okay. Even I can't see it. Anyway, let me tell you. So there is styles.css, some AWS min.js, config.js, app.js, and favicon.ico. Which one? Okay. So config.js. Now go to response or request or cookies or request. Okay, this is the request. Nothing there. I think no headers. Okay, scroll down. Even I can't see it. So there is some headers like accept encoding, language connection, response. Okay, I see some environment variables like region, user pool ID, app client ID. I think so if you see, that's how easy it is to find some publicly available information about a cognito pool from a web application. And this is what we have seen, because application actually uses this to perform the redirection and authentication part. If I click on sign in, if you see, it is entering some data here, also using some things here. These are the things actually you are able to find. You can find in here. Another way, let me just use this way so that you can actually see what I was showing here. Again, go to page source. If you scroll down, there is a file called config.js here. And this is the thing that we just saw. Okay. Again, if you see, there is user pool ID. This can be publicly available. Then there is app client ID. This is what maps the web application to the cognito user pool. This is also we needed. That's the name of the user pool domain. That's the identity pool. And this is the S3 bucket. If you see, we are seeing some things here. API based cognito URL, redirect URL, sign out URL. Okay, so from all these, I think most of the things can be publicly available, but if you see, there is an identity pool ID that is leaking here. So if an attacker just know about this identity pool ID, and if there is a guest access enabled on the cognito pool, they can actually use this ID to exchange it for temporary credentials, and whatever permissions that temporary credential has, you will also gain those particular credentials. So that's the thing here. If you are a developer, never expose the identity pool ID here. Okay, this should not be publicly available, but again, most of the developers they don't know about the impact of this particular string. Generally this is the generally they actually need all this information except this for the application to work. And again, these things are generally publicly available to in any application that uses cognito, because the application actually needs it. Without it cannot function. Okay, but this one, the application needs it, but it can be on the server side, not on the front end. Okay, yeah. So again, what we are going to do, if let me show this particular the cognito pool that this particular app is using. Again, I think it is using this particular cognito pool, where it is this one, cognito notes user. And okay, I think this is the identity pool. Actually, this is the identity that the application is using. If you see, this is the identity ID. If you see, it's 92, ends with 92 here. I think it will be the same, ends with 92. Okay, and one more thing that we have to see, if I go inside this particular identity pool, and if I go to the user access, you see there are two things enabled, which is guest access is active. Generally, there are times when we want to perform some operation without authentication. For that, developers actually use guest access. And if we want to authenticate and perform something, then this authenticated access is used. Okay, and when we enable guest access, we have to attach a role for the unauthenticated users. So this is the name of the role, and whatever permissions that are present in this role, the user will also gain via the temporary credentials, and these temporary credentials are for this particular role. Okay, so yeah, that's what guest access is, and this is the authenticated access authenticated role. You can have both of them same, and maybe or maybe you can have separate. Again, it depends on the developer how they want to build it. Okay, but generally, I would highly suggest don't use guest access. I have seen applications using guest access. Because we don't know the business case. Okay, we are just pen testing it. We will just notify the client, hey, we find these issues, and you can, if you want, you can fix it, or at least don't expose the identity ID at least. Okay, so yeah, let's since we have a identity pool ID, we can exchange it for a temporary credentials. How do we do it? Even I don't know. Let's see. Okay, let's go to this particular lab, and let's reveal this hint maybe. Yeah, okay, so if you see, this is the command that you can use. Again, for this particular command to work, you need to install the AWS CLI. Again, the installation of AWS CLI is very simple. It's just a Google, you are just a Google query away from installing it. So once you have installed the AWS CLI, that's the AWS CLI. You can use AWS as a command, and let me just paste the same thing here. I think we need a different laptop, Hardik. I think the control button is in the the extreme corner, which is not in the extreme corner actually. So Control Shift V. Okay, as you can see, so that's the command, and we just need the identity pool ID, which we have, which we got from the on the application config.js. Yeah, from the application config.js, and then we got this particular identity. And if you see what we are doing, so we are using the AWS CLI, and we are using the service called Cognito Identity, which is the identity pool part of the Cognito. Then we are trying to get the ID. So this is an ID that AWS uses to map to the temporary credentials. So it is going to get me a ID using this particular pool ID. Okay, and that's the pool ID that we just have to know, and then the region on which the service is web app is hosted. If we, I think if we just click on sign in, I think it will reveal the region. If you see, the region is also revealed here. Okay, AP Southern, which is the Mumbai region. Okay, I think yeah. So this is the only information that we need. And once we hit enter, I hope the command is clear. Simple. It's just getting a ID. Any questions? Okay, let me hit enter here, and it gave me a identity ID. And to this ID, and using this identity ID, we can ask for basically the temporary credentials are mapped to this particular ID. And now since we know the ID, we can ask the AWS Cognito service to send the temporary credential of the role that is assigned to the guest access. So let's exchange it. And for the folks who are new to AWS Pentest or to the web application Pentest, don't get disappointed, because there are a lot to learn, and if you know all the basics, then this will be very, very easy for you guys. Okay, because I see some dull faces here. I think it's majorly because of the things that you might, since you are in the beginning phase, right? Anyways, now we can get the ID, right? Again, let's use this amazing portal. Okay, yeah, I think that's what we want now. Let's paste it. Control Shift V. Again, if you see, I have to change the identity ID that I just got. I think this is the one that we need. Copy and paste. Okay, again, if you see AWS Cognito Identity, get credentials for identity, this identity that we just got. Okay, very simple command, and just in a matter of just 2 commands, we are able to get the temporary credentials with which we can access the AWS service, or whatever the role, whatever the permission assigned to that particular role. Okay, this is the temporary credential of that particular role I just showed you, that is mapped to the guest access. Okay, now we have some credentials. I think with this we have gained initial access to an AWS account. Now what generally we do once as an attacker, whenever we get some keys, there is a tool called AWS enumerator, and it will, because we don't know, because looking at these keys we don't know, right, what permissions this particular role has to service, right? We don't know which service we can access. So there is a tool called AWS enumerator, in which we can set up these temporary credentials. Okay, I think, okay, let me just I think I have to remove a lot. I think I already ran it previously, so let me just copy paste from here. Again, these are all this information, you can fill it from this, because you already have this in okay, let me just run this command once again. Where am I? This tab, yeah, this one. Okay, let me Control C, Control Shift V. Again, let's fill this access key ID information, and then the where it is, again, all these temporary credentials. So if you can exchange it for multiple temporary credentials, but all these temporary credentials are for a single role. Okay, let me paste it, and secret key is also there. Where? Here. Yeah. Okay, and then the session key is here, a session token. Let's just copy it and then paste it. Perfect. Now we have set up the credential for this particular tool. Now we can use AWS enumerator, then enum for enumeration. So using this credential, it will try to target each and every AWS service and see which service we have access to. If I just hit enter, it is going to go through each of the service and trying to find out which service I have access. If you see 0, it means I don't have any access. So, and these are the test cases it is trying to form. So these are the permissions. So on a particular service, let's suppose, if you take this particular service, this one, it has targeted 8 there are actions in AWS, so like get action, list action, delete action. It has tried sending all this event and it has gotten 0 response. It means we don't have any access to this particular service. But similarly there are lots and lots of service. It will go through each and every AWS service and if you see, we see some here. So it means that we have some access to the Lambda service. Okay, so let me just close this thing because it is going to take a bit more time, and then I will just directly use AWS instead of enum. Let's dump. Then it will show me whatever it has ran till now. Okay, I think. So I think I stopped it here, so that's why I don't has a data for this particular service. But I already saw that it has some access to this Lambda service, JKL. Okay, if you see, it has also given me that it has list functions access on the Lambda service. Okay, now I know the temporary credential has this particular access, right? So now I will set up. Let me just do one thing. Let me just copy paste the credentials somewhere. Yeah. Let's open mousepad somewhere. Control A, V, and then the copy. Let's copy it, and then let's configure it this credential for the AWS to use. Okay, so Control C, Control L. Now AWS configure. Let's create a profile called Cognito unauth, because we were unauthenticated, and we have to pass the same thing that we just copied. Now we want AWS, using AWS we want to use it. So using AWS enumerator, we just found out the services, and if we want to interact with the service, we again have to use AWS access key. And in earlier when I ran AWS, I was unauthenticated. Now I am configuring some credentials that I just received. I hope it doesn't expire because it has less validity. But again, anytime I can just use the identity pool and exchange it for temporary credentials. Okay, and let's copy this entire string. Okay, now if I use the region is AP South 1, output format can be JSON, and if I do AWS STS get caller identity and I just write Cognito, this one, the profile is set up. It means the credentials are set up. Now I can interact with AWS using those credentials. And if I do Control Shift V, this is basically the who am I of AWS. Okay, if I hit enter, it is giving me that, hey, this particular credentials belongs to this account and to this particular role, and this role has permissions to, again we just use AWS enumerator. This role has get functions permission on or list, I think it was list functions permission on the Lambda service. So I will use AWS Lambda. I think it's the same thing. I think I already have typed it. So here I have changed this particular profile, and it will Control Shift V. Okay, AWS simple AWS Lambda list functions, because I have this, basically this role has this particular functions. When I say role, it means this profile which is related to this role. Okay, if I hit enter, as you can see, I can list the functions in a AWS account. Okay, so this is the Lambda functions. If you see, this is the function, this is the array, and these are the list of functions. This is the first function, that's the first function, that's the second function. Then we have if you see, some tokens are already saved. Again, this is where privilege escalation comes in. You might get some other credentials which you can again configure with AWS and try to use AWS enumerator again to find the access that those has. Yeah, you can also get a flag here as well. If you see some password to the database, again actually this lambda is function as a code service. Basically you don't have to worry about the infrastructure of the environment of a code. Okay, so basically what lambda allows you, just write your code and it will run. Okay, so so if you want to do some operations and you don't want to configure a system or the binaries or the libraries, you can use lambda as a service. Okay, generally this lambda service is heavily used in AWS for automation. Okay, and you are going to get, since automation requires some credentials, so you might get some credentials. And again, many times we see some credentials somewhere. Okay, anyway, I think we solved this challenge. So let's take this flag and let's complete the challenge. Okay, I think I have to put the flag here, Control V, and let's submit it. And wow, yeah, we completed this particular challenge. Okay, perfect. So that was about the gaining initial access in AWS account using guest access. Okay, but let's suppose the guest access is not enabled. Then what you will do? Generally, web applications, if you see a web application allows you to sign up as well. If you see, there is a sign up button here. So using sign up, you can enroll in the application, and using the new credential, the sign up credential that you used, you can also again exchange it for a cognitive identity pool. So let me just quickly walk through it. I hope, Hardik, we have some time. Okay, let's use it in the a different lab maybe. Okay, so I think we will use it the sign up feature. Don't worry, we will use the sign up feature somewhere else, but I think let's hold it for now. But we are going to access in the using the sign up feature, we are going to access the we are going to learn the update custom attributes. Okay, so where were we? Where is this? Where are the labs? Okay, this one we have already done. I think this one, self-made user. Here what we do, let me just view the hints directly. Again, if you I will just go through the notes. Okay, so using this command, you sign up on the application, or you can directly use the web-based GUI to sign up on the application. And now, since you signed up, you know the credential, right? The username, your username and password. Using the username and password, and you already know the pool ID, so you can just use the using this. Where is it? Yeah. So when you run this command, it will give you the ID tokens and access tokens. And if you see, using the ID tokens, you will get a ID, and using the ID, you get the temporary credentials. And again, you can again abuse the application and get the authenticated role access. Okay. Again, I have skipped that particular attack vector here because it takes some time to cover that. Maybe some time later we can perform that particular attack. Now comes the update custom attributes. Okay, this ones we have abused a lot in our web application pen test when the application is using Cognito. Okay, the idea here is actually very simple. So let me just show you the Cognito. If I go to users, and if I go in the users, if I go to the notes, all the users, and if I go to users, and let's open a user. Actually, you can set custom attributes to user. Okay, so I have email. This is the ID of this particular user, and you can create custom roles. Basically, you can create custom attributes. It can be role, it can be phone number, it can be address, anything you want. Okay, because a web application might need it. Okay, so the thing about the custom roles is they are by default writable. Okay, so if there is a custom attribute that the developer has created, and again by default it is writable, so it means you can edit the attribute. So if there is a role, custom role, and the value is user, you can change the attribute, right? Anyone can change their attribute. And what you change it to, from user to admin, right? That's what we will also do. Okay, so how to perform this attack, the updating the custom attributes. I will go quick this time, so let's see. Okay, so this is let me sign out, and let's since it is a publicly available application, anyone can sign back in. Anyone can sign up as well. If you see, there is a sign up button here. I will sign up here. Use email @ just to use this particular application. Let's enter a password and then sign up. Again, it has sent a verification code on my phone, so let me just use it. Gmail. Okay, it's 315-411 and confirm the account creation. Okay, let me type it again, maybe 315-411, confirm account. Okay, as you can see, the account is confirmed. It means I own the account and I can sign up on this particular application. As you can see, I can access my notes. Since I just signed in, I don't have any, I just signed up, I don't have any notes files, but I can do it, I can create it, right? I am just a normal legitimate user now. Now if I go to this particular one, where it is, yeah, here, custom. Okay, so let's view the hints. Okay, so what I can do, if let me authenticate it. Okay, I have already signed up using the GUI. Actually, you can also using CLI. You can sign up, but since I have used GUI, so I am a signed in user and I have the credentials. And if I use Control-Shift-V, and if I see this particular command, it is what it is doing. It is initiating the Cognito authentication using the Cognito identity provider, which is nothing but identity user pool, actually, not the identity pool. Don't think it's identity pool, it's a user pool. I'm initiating the authentication. That's the client ID. From where I will get the client ID? Again, it's baked in the config. This is the client ID. Okay. That's the client ID. Authentication flow is user password authentication. I'm basically using user email and password. That's why that's the authentication flow. Email is shashi.fox@gmail.com, and password is just I just use test@123. Okay, and I am just initiating the authentication. So when I'm logging in, where it is, yeah, if you see, when I logged in, I got some credentials, right? So this is what I am doing with the CLI. So let me just sign out and sign back in. So when I'm using signing in and I'm entering the password, right, this is what I'm doing the same thing with the CLI, and it is giving me some tokens which it will send to the web application, actually. So let me just again sign back in as this user. Okay, Gmail. Okay, again it is also behind the scenes, it is sending the same tokens, not the same but the different tokens, but again it is mapped to the same user. Now we have the access token of this user, refresh token, as well as the identity token. Okay, in this case we are going to use the access token of the user. So what we can do using the access, we have the access token, means we are authenticated as that user, and if I'm authenticated as that user, I can view my attributes, right? So let's view that. The command is this one, and then the access token, Control L, Control Shift Q, Control Shift V, and the access token I just received here. Where here? Okay. Or okay, let's see. I hope this was the one. Control Shift V. Okay, and using this I can get the user attributes. Okay, as you can see, I just received my attributes that the email is this one. I am the email verify attribute is true because I just verified using the OTP that I received. This is the custom role that I have user, and this is the I think this is the subject identifier. Maybe this uniquely identifies user in a identity pool. But what I told you, if there is a custom attributes that we create, how do we create custom attributes? It's again very simple. Again, this is generally used by the developers to create some attributes. So I can just go to sign up, and here I can create. There right now there is one attribute. I can create more. Maybe like maybe phone number. Okay, that is actually needed at the time of sign up. Okay, again if you see, so if you see, whenever I just create an attribute, there is a custom prefix there. That's how I know it is a custom attribute and it is writable. By default AWS makes it writable. I don't know why, but yeah. So again I know that this attribute is writable, so I can change the value of it. So let me just quickly change it. And then that's this one. I think you can also next time you get if you get a web application in your pen tests, try to see if it is using Cognito. I think Cognito is just picking up, and you will see more and more Cognito in the coming days because it is a very easy service to use. So let's copy the same token, access token, and let's and this basically this token identifies the user. So I am actually changing the attribute of this particular user. Yeah, if you see Cognito identity pool, update user attributes, this is the region. Name of the attribute is custom role, and I am changing it to the value of admin. Okay, and let me just show you here. Right now this is my user interface. I see home, notes, files and accounts. Okay, nothing else. But if I just update this to admin, I hope it updates. Yeah, I think it updated. Let me just rerun the previous command to just again see the attributes. As you can see, now the custom role is set to application, and if the application is using this particular role to make a user admin user, I will become a admin user. So if I reload this, what will happen? Okay, I will not become the admin because this token was before I became admin, right? So if I just reload, I will not see admin, but if I sign out and sign back in, it will again give me access token. In that token, my role will be admin. Let me just sign back in. Again, this is the same authentication flow. Okay, now you see there is a admin panel here. Okay, so that's how you can abuse custom attributes incognito. Okay, using after signing up. Again, in both the scenarios, I don't have any access to any credentials. In the first case, I was unauthenticated. In the second case, I just signed up. Okay, both the cases I did not need any credentials to gain initial access. In the first case, to a AWS account. In the second case, access to admin portal in a web application. Okay. Yeah, that was about custom attributes. So I showed two scenarios. Yeah, it is this one and this one. There is one more which is related to sign up feature. Again, I don't think we have time for that, so I will skip that one. Anyways, I was not intending for it in this particular session. Maybe in the next session we can cover that up. Yeah, so yeah, that was from me, guys. I hope you learn more about AWS and different initial access techniques via Cognito. There are many more techniques in AWS. Cognito is just one of them. We are just scratching the surface. Okay, yeah, so that's it from me, guys.